Hello everyone, my name is Elijah David, minister of the 12th Hour Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation, Mountain Valley, the 12th Hour in the Liberty Hill, Texas. Today is June the 2, 2013. It is CBN 24, 2017. We will start our first service on this first day of the week with a song entitled, Let Yahshua Come Into Your Heart. If you are tired of the load of your sin, let Yahshua come into your heart. If you desire a new life to begin, let Yahshua come into your heart. Just now your doubtings give over. Just now reject him no more. Just now open the door. Let Yahshua come into your heart. If 'tis for purity now that you sigh, let Yahshua come into your heart. Mountains for cleansing are flowing nearby. Let Yahshua come into your heart. Just now your doubtings give over. Just now reject him no more. Just now throw open the door. Let Yahshua come into your heart. If there's a tempest your voice cannot still, let Yahshua come into your heart. If there's a void this world never can fill, let Yahshua come into your heart. Just now your doubtings give over. Just now reject him no more. Just now throw open the door. Let Yahshua come into your heart. If you would join the glad songs of the blessed, let Yahshua come into your heart. If you would enter the mountains of flesh, let Yahshua come into your heart. Just now your doubtings give over. Just now reject him no more. Just now throw open the door. Let Yahshua come into your heart. Hello everyone, once again this is Elijah David. We're going to continue our series on the wise and the 5 foolish virgins. It's entitled The Kingdom of the Heaven, Likened unto 10 Virgins. And so therefore, it's reading from Leather Symbolic Code number 12 by the B.T. Hardif, the Shepherd's Rod. For you folks out there that are listening to this, don't know who B.T. Hardif is or was. B.T. Hardif was a little Bulgarian that came from Bulgaria, and he joined the Adventist Church here in America, and he became the leader of the Branch Davidian, Seventh-day Adventists, that continued off of the Adventists in 1930. And so therefore he headed up the Shepherd's Rod movement, what they call the Shepherd's Rod, and simply meaning authority for Yahweh's government. That's all Shepherd's Rod means. And he was teaching restoration of Yahweh's government, so therefore he had the right title. He was teaching Micah 6:9, hear the rod and he had the pointer. The rod means the same thing as scepter. Scepter means authority for Yahweh's government. That's a shepherd's rod, in other words. That's what a scepter is. Okay, and then it says right here in Genesis 49:10, a scepter shall not be far from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Well, what is that telling us? There's a whole lot of information right there in that scripture. It says the scepter shall not depart. Well, the scepter was found in the Adventist church as the second movement of the Adventists. The second step is the genuine movement of Seventh-day Adventists, 1930. It was called the shepherd rod. And Genesis 49:10 called it a scepter, and said it will not depart from Judah. Well, it just so happened that Judah came on the scene in 1930, out of the prophecy of Ezekiel 4. Was reborn again in our day, the tribe of Judah. Okay, V.T. Hollis sitting upon the throne of David, and the tribe of Judah, with the scepter, the rod. And another name for David is the rod. And Yahweh gave him the name of his second step of the movement, Davidic Seventh-day Adventists. Davidic kingdom. Okay. So it says here we have a prophecy in Genesis 49:10, a scepter shall not depart from the Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. Who's the lawgiver? It says in Revelation that the Lamb of the tribe of Judah, Yeshua, is the lawgiver. That's Revelation 5. Okay, until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Who is Shiloh? Shiloh is this lawgiver, is Yeshua. And Yeshua is scheduled to come back in the person, in our time, now in this 12th parabolic hour. Says so. Says so right there in Luke chapter 1. And I'll go ahead and read it to you. Luke 1:32. It says, he shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Yahweh Elohim, the Father, shall give unto him, his son, the lawgiver, Shiloh, Yeshua, the throne of his father David. So apparently the throne of his father David then is very much in existence today. Okay. And it says, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever. Forever. You know what the house of Jacob is? That's the 12 tribes. That's 144,000 today. He's going to sit upon the throne of David and reign over the house of Jacob. Okay? So now, what does all that suggest? Tell you what, we're just going to leave that right where it's at. We're going to call that our prayer thought, and we're going to now go to our main theme about the 10 virgins. 11 symbolic code number 12 for those of you that are following along. And hope that will give you some introduction as to the author of this Shepherd's Rod book. Is V.T. Hollis, a little Bulgarian. And let me tell you what. This is the latter rain of truth in compilation. Ellen G. White had the former rain of truth in compilation of the Spirit of Prophecy books she wrote. She wrote over 55 volumes in her lifetime. She wrote for 70 years. V.T. Hollis wrote for 25 years. He compiled this condensed version of the latter rain of the truth, coupled with the former rain. Okay, the Ellen G. White. And now what do we have? We have a compacted prophecy that we are implored to ingest through the Spirit of Prophecy in its compacted form. Now, we're looking at page about 16 here on this 11 symbolic code number 12. And it says, go back up and do a little review there on page 15 where it says in Revelation 21:9 and 10, and there came unto me one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the Spirit unto a great and high mountain, showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from the Elohim. Now, keep in mind this angel, which had the 7 vials, now he has 7 vials, full of the 7 last plagues. Okay? Now he hadn't poured those plagues out yet. So probation hasn't closed yet for the human race. It's only, probation closes before the start of the outpouring of the 7 last plagues. Okay, now, that being so, this angel talked with John the Revelator here, and he says, "Come up hither and I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife." So that angel took me upon a high mountain, and he carried me away in the spirit unto a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of the heaven from Elohim. Well, is that at the end of the millennium? We have to wait another 1,000 years. This angel showed this to John before he poured out the 7 last plagues here in this 12th parabolic hour. Because when they're poured out, the 7 last plagues cover the 15-month period. You'll find that prophecy there in Daniel 7:10. The time and a season. Time is 1 year, a season is 3 months. Okay? And so now the 7 last plagues covers the last 15 months of this earth's history in the 6,000-year period that this earth was allowed to exist with the sin problem. Okay? So now this angel is showing John the Revelator, and so it says in Luke 17:20, it says, "The kingdom of Yahweh cometh not with the observation, but verily the kingdom of Yahweh is within you." Then another place it says that we are translated into the kingdom of his dear Son there in Colossians 1:13. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about dwelling in heavenly places, as Paul told those Gentiles there in Ephesians. He said, we dwell in heavenly places. Wherever Yahweh and his Son chooses to place their name, and that becomes the place of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, and that is one of the heavenly places of heaven. Wherever the kingdom is set up here on this earth, you are in a heavenly place. And in another place, Ellen G. White, the prophetess Adventist Church, she was instructed through a vision that the Adventist Church in her purity represents the holy city. Okay? Now how hard is that? Now, the Adventist Church has never reached her purity yet. But there's a prophecy that says there's 144,000 first fruits that's going to come out of her as what she has produced after her many long years on the scene. Of about 170 years she's been on the scene. And now she's about to produce a first fruits harvest of a purified people entitled 144,000. And now this 144,000 for the first time is going to give notoriety to the Adventist congregation as being that holy city that Ellen G. White saw in vision. Well, her first vision in 1844, after she was placed at the head of the Advent movement, was only 144,000. She had over 2,000 visions and dreams in her lifetime. And yet, her first vision was only 144,000. Okay, with 144,000, nobody's ever seen them yet. And back in 1844, that's been about 169 years ago. So we got one more year, make it 170. And you can all see, or at least get more information on the closeness of the 144,000 of showing up. Now it says right here, the Lamb's wife is the city. Now I've described to you what constitutes the holy city. They're living people, 144,000 more notably in number, representing this holy city. Now it says the holy city is the Lamb's wife. So the holy city didn't have to be represented by some living bodies of people. In this case, it'd be 144,000. So let's just assume then that the Lamb's wife is 144,000. Now when that angel took John the Revelator up on that high mountain and showed him the holy city come down from Elohim out of heaven, well, we have a body of people here on earth that are a symbol of that holy city. And that's 144,000. It's just quite an invasion years ago. It was shown that the Adventist Church represents the holy city. She wrote that in Great Controversy. So it says, John saw the foundations and the walls of the buildings of the holy city. He did not see people, no. He didn't literally see the 144,000. But he was told that there's going to be 144,000 in the end time stand upon Mount Zion with a lamp. Revelation 14:1. He did not see people. He called the city the Lamb's wife. No, because if you have a literal city, then you're not going to see the inhabitants inside the city unless you're standing outside the city. So all you're going to see is the walls around that city, and maybe some of the buildings over inside the city. But you're not going to see inhabitants unless you can look over and see them out in the open somewhere. So it says, he did not see people. He called the city the Lamb's wife. If the city is the Lamb's wife, and if the virgins are the ones who are to meet the bridegroom, then it says, then who is the bride? Well, the bride is the 144,000, and they're the virgins. So we strain at a gnat and swallow a camel here. We don't wash it. Okay. The kingdom must be the bride. The people of the Elohim's congregation are the guests and are represented by the virgins. No, they're represented by the laity that are converted to the virgins, which represents the 144,000. Remember, the virgins are purified people. They represent the purified section of Yahweh's congregation. What is their job once they become purified? It's to go gather a harvest of their brethren, the laity. The same thing is true in this parable, as we find in the parable of the king going on to examine the guests for the marriage, one of whom he found without the wedding garment on. Those whom he examines are the guests. To summarize then, the people are the guests, the kingdom is the bride, Yahweh is the groom. Moreover, in the parable we are studying today, did Yahweh come to earth where the 10 virgins were? Yes, he did. Where he came where both the unworthy and the worthy virgins were. Okay, now, let me tell you something else. It says that the virgins, representing the pure section of Yahweh's church, were not contaminated with women. They were not defiled with women. It says in Revelation 14. Women meaning they weren't contaminated with false doctrines of false churches around them. They grew up in one church, the house of Israel. And when they learn truth, they accept it step by step until they come to maturity. That's what constitutes virgins that haven't been contaminated. Now the 5 foolish virgins was also born in the house of Israel and grew up right along beside the 5 wise virgins. But they were contaminated with false doctrine that developed in the house of Israel. not something that they had accepted from false churches around. So they were defiled as well. They might not have been defiled with women, but they were defiled with false doctrine as being taught by the prophet. Well, then how did the 5 wise virgins emerge with pure doctrine? Well, the scripture says, take here a little and there a little, line upon line, precept upon precept. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. But the 5 wise virgins held fast that which was good, and they let the rest of it go. So when the prophet in the pulpit was teaching partly truth and partly falsehood, they were able to discern the good part and the bad part. They accepted the good part, and they didn't have anything to do with the false part. That's the 5 wise virgins. Does that make sense? Yeah, to me it does. Okay, now it says, if he came to the earth and had a door of his own to shut or to open, that would indicate that he had a place of his own. Okay. Then he will come unto his kingdom. And unless the guests enter on time or through the door, they will be disappointed when they knock, and the door will not be opened unto them. Now, when Yahshua comes to his kingdom has a leader of his choice. In other words, Yahshua has chosen a servant and had him anointed and coronated as the king upon his throne. If he's in a kingdom, you ever hear of a kingdom a king having a kingdom and not be crowned as a king of that kingdom? If it has the title of a kingdom, then you have whoever is sitting upon the throne of that kingdom has got a crown on his head as well. You can go read that in Zechariah. You can read that in Zechariah 3 on the 6th. Talks about that. Joshua the son of Joseph had a crown put upon his head. He was a king upon that throne. He had a crown put upon his head, he was a king. What was he the king upon? The day was thrown there in the tribe of Judah, which is called the mountain of the house of Yahweh, the house of the Yahweh here on earth, the kingdom of David. Okay, so it says that since this coming of the bridegroom is obviously not the visible second coming of Yahshua, to take to heaven his people, who shall meet him in the air, we should be able to find in the Scriptures something more about it. Let us now turn unto Matthew 25, 31, 32. And the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him. Then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divided his sheep from the goats. Okay. Now back up to this here kingdom again. It said then he will come to his kingdom. But in his kingdom here on earth is the people that are performing their vows and following the sanctuary service, and as it's laid out in heaven. There's a temple in heaven. There's a sanctuary in heaven. Heaven goes by that same sanctuary and the same laws that we go by here on earth. So when Yahshua comes to the door, he comes to the door of the sanctuary. Okay? And so he can't just come and open the door and walk in. Why? John 10 says Yahshua is the door of that temple. How come he can't walk through his own door when he comes to it? How come he has to knock on the door, wait for somebody to open the door? Because the occupants inside the temple are running it the way they want to. Because to see the good man, Yahshua had gone to a far country. He's just coming back to receive his people and take charge of his temple again, his kingdom. That's where you stand outside the door knocking. He'd been on a long journey, been gone for a while. He's coming back to see what he would find and he knocked on that door. And he was saying that whoever opened that door, he said, I will come in with them and sup with them. But somebody inside has to open that door. They have to invite me in. I'm not just coming and grab a hold of that doorknob and open it and just walk on in. It's because it's my kingdom. He said, I left that kingdom in charge of a steward. And he said, the steward's in charge of that. And as long as he's in charge of it, that's his priority to have possession of it. And it's his choice whether he opens the door and let me in or not. Okay? Let us go on. It says in Matthew 25, 31, 32, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. Well, the only throne that he's designated to sit upon is that throne of David, and you find out in Luke 1, 32, 33. And he's going to sit upon to reign over the house of Jacob, the 12 tribes, 144,000. Now, why is that? Because he sets them up as his lawmakers, as the executioners of the laws of his kingdom. And they have titles of prophet, priests, and kings. In other words, they're ministers, they're prophets with inspiration, and they're kings with authority to rule over their subjects, the subjects of the kingdom. So Yahshua turns out all over to the 144,000 once he comes and takes his position upon his throne. And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. So he's going to gather all nations. He's going to separate the goats, which represents the bad fish caught out there in that water. He's going to put the sheep on the right, that represents the saints. And then he's going to say, come and inherit the kingdom prepared from you from the foundation of the world. Well, isn't this amazing? The kingdom that they inherit is prepared from the foundation of this world. It wasn't prepared from the foundation in heaven, that kingdom of heaven, what we call kingdom of heaven. That's a misnomer right there. Kingdom of the heaven. Now when you put the article in there, then it says it has a wholly, entirely different meaning. It simply means that the kingdom of the heaven is the everlasting kingdom of the David that's been set up here on earth. That's the kingdom of the heaven. When Yahweh made that covenant with David back then, that it would be that way, then he authorized Solomon his son to build that kingdom, to build that temple, to build that city of Jerusalem on the kingly palace ground in Jerusalem. And then Jerusalem is called the city of David. Bethlehem is called the city of David. Did these verses say that the Son of Man is going to come down on a cloud, to where the just risen dead along with the living saints will meet him in the air? As we note there in 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. Is that what we just read? No, it says here at this coming, he will gather all nations before him. The Adventists have for long taught that when Yahshua comes back, he never touches the earth, because 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17 says so. Okay, and they said that he gathers all the saints from the earth up into the clouds and take them back to heaven. He don't even touch his earth. He's so sinful. But it says right here in Matthew 25, 31 and 32, he has to come and sit upon the throne of David, which is right here on this earth. And it's the place where he designates to put it. And in this case, the throne of David is right here being occupied here in Liberty Hill, Texas. And it's right here on this earth. So Yahshua does come back. Because in Zechariah 14:5 it says, his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount Olive. And Job 19:25 says, I know that my Redeemer liveth, for in the latter day he shall stand upon the earth. Okay? So we have too much evidence to prove that Yahshua does come back and stand upon this earth and sit upon the throne of David on this earth and reigns until he puts all enemies under his footstool. Yes, I would say manifestly that he is definitely will be here in the person, reigning as the King of kings and sovereign of sovereigns upon the throne of David. And then he has appointed 144,000, his bride, to also share in their kingdom and the crowns for the kingship. Okay. In other words, speaking in the pagan terms, he has made them as gods to the people. And more watered down version of it, he has made them as a deity to the people. 144,000. Okay. And if you want to put it in another term, he has made them as a voice of Yahweh to the people, like he did Moses and David, exclusively. Okay. It says, it doesn't say that he comes in the clouds. So he comes with the clouds, and he comes with many angels. But you know, in 1 Thessalonians 4:16, there's no angels mentioned there. Besides, it says, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven. What does that suggest to you? The Father. Well, what is 1 Thessalonians 4:16? Where is that coming then? That's the third coming. Yahshua represents the second coming when he comes in Matthew 25:31-32 and sits upon the throne of his glory and rises upon his earth. That's his second coming. The third coming is the Father coming. It says the Lord himself shall descend from heaven. Not Yahshua himself, but it says the Yahweh the Father himself shall descend from heaven. Well, he don't have no angels with him. Why? Because the angels have all come with his Son ahead of time. Matthew 25:31, it says Yahshua comes with all the angels. Well, if he comes with all the angels, and when the Father comes next, there's no angels left in heaven to come with him. Okay? The Father's always traveled around in his traveling throne in the universe. His location for his home port is in the sides of the north. But he's always traveled around by himself in his throne. His Son has a throne, which is in a fine saucer, traveling throne. Find that in Ezekiel 126 for one place. Okay? So it says now, he will gather all nations before him, and then he will sit down on a throne. It says sit down on a throne. Not the throne of David, but it says a throne. Well, this a throne is an indefinite article, meaning he will sit down on a throne that is prepared for him here on earth. And you go to Luke 1:13, it says that throne is in the kingdom of David. It's in the house of David. And it's called the throne of David. Because the Heavenly Father has given unto his Son, Yahshua, the throne of his earthly father David. When he comes to earth, he's going to sit upon that throne. So it says right there, he will sit down, and instead of saying a throne, he should have sit down. He should have said, and he will sit down on the throne of his earthly father David in the kingdom of the heaven here on earth, which is the same thing as the kingdom of heaven. I mean, the kingdom of David, the everlasting kingdom of David. Daniel 2:44 and 45 said it's a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and it will not be given unto another people, but it will stand forever. Okay? He will put the goats on the left and the sheep on the right. Moreover, he will tell each of the two classes that they have or have not done, what they have or have not done. That caused them to be thus judged and separated. Did you not see clearly why we need the extra oil, the message of the judgment for the living? We as the Adventists have been preaching the judgment for 100 years or more. And yet never even for a moment did we see that these parables were talking about the judgment for the living. Okay. It says that if we never saw it before, we should now be able to clearly see that this judgment included the separation of the righteous and the wicked. And that began in terms of Texas 2002. We had been together for 32 long years as a body of believers and co-mingling with each other and associating with each other and worshiping and praying and working together in the vineyard. Two groups of people for 32 years because we had a common interest. We were essentially headed for the same goal. But somewhere along the line, some people lost their way. But they still stayed with those that hadn't lost their way. And we all ended up at the same place together, but there was a separation at the end of the line. That's called the judgment began at the house of Yahweh, 1 Peter 4:17. It began at the Gilead Center in Kermit, Texas, 2002. It started at the Passover. It culminated at the atonement of that year. So the judgment, when the judgment finally comes and starts on the people actually executing executive judgment, then it's a 6-month period. It's actually a 6-month period from Passover to atonement. We cannot say the judgment we are reading about in the Matthew 25 is the judgment which is to take place during the millennium, because his people are not then among the nations. There is positively no escaping of the conclusion that it takes place in the time of the judgment for the living. We know the judgment for the living is in the 12th parabolic hour. We have entered into that since 2002. How do I know that? Because I understand the parable of Matthew 20 and the 5 groups of laborers that were called. I understand the times that they were called. I understand who were the leaders of those 5 groups when they were called. That's how I know where we're at. Because there's called at parabolical hours. Moses being called at the first parabolical hour on the time clock, called early in the morning. Yahshua was called at the 3rd hour. Or you might say Yahshua, the householder, came and called the disciples at the 3rd hour. William Miller was called at the 6th hour in 1833. Ellen G. White was called at the 9th hour in 1844. Then there's one more group left, and that was those that's called at the 11th hour. Who were there? V.T. Hart didn't even know who they were. He knew who the 4th group were, the Adventists, that's called at the 9th hour. So he left that for the interpretation of the prophet whom it would be given to in the future. And that's Elijah David speaking to you now. That's the reason I say I know where we're at in the stream of time. We passed from the 11th parabolic hour in 2002 with Kermit, Texas, Gilead Center, Rhodes Johnson at the helm, as the angel of the 7th candlestick, Laodicea. Laodicea represents the Adventist Church. He was the last prophet of the Adventist Church in the 3rd feeding passion, the 3rd step of the genuine movement of Seventh-day Advent. Rhodes Johnson brought the judgment of the dead and the Adventist Church to a close by him apostatizing and not accepting Elijah's message that Elijah David gave to him in 2002, just before Yahshua came and cut him off forever. I gave him that message about 2 months in 2002 before he was cut off at the atonement. When I gave him that last message, he had 2 months to go about to accept it, repent, do what he was told to do, or be cut off. You know the rest. He was cut off. He is now dead in his grave. So it says there is positively no escaping of the conclusion that it takes place in the time of the judgment for living, when both the righteous and the wicked are commingled on the earth. So when the judgment began, it began 10 years ago, closing out the judgment of the dead period, and the 6th seal, and the 6th trumpet, opening up the 7th trumpet, the 7th seal, the half-hour silence, and starting the judgment of the living, and started Ezekiel 9 investigative judgment, and the marking of those that are signed and crowned with the abomination done in the Adventist church and the Davidian world, the daughters of the Adventists. And I'm talking about the shepherd rod, the Davidians, and then I'm talking about the branch, Isaac branch Davidians, at Kermit, Texas, that I was with for 32 years. Since, moreover, this work of the separation goes on among the people themselves, it is clear that it is not a work to be done in the heaven. Verily, it is a work to be done on the earth. Then shall two be in the field. The one shall be taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill. The one shall be taken, the other left. Matthew 24:40. 41. Some call that the rapture, but it is quite different than what they think it is. Gilead Center is the only descriptive congregation that I can think of, that I was a part of for 32 years, where there was two of us working together for the same cause. And that's laboring in the vineyard and for the cause of the souls of men. And when the separation came in 2002, I was taken, and the one that I was working alongside for 32 years, that Yahweh sent me to work alongside the prophet, I was taken into the kingdom, prepared from the foundation of the world, and the prophet was left. My wife was taken, and she was the right-hand helper of the prophet's wife, Rameh. My wife was taken and into the kingdom, and the wife was left behind. They both perished together. So that's what this means when it says, one shall be taken and the other left. We actually experienced and witnessed that with our own eyes. It literally happened when the judgment started in 2002 at Kermit, Texas. Now we plainly see that Yeshua in the Matthew 25 is talking about the judgment for the living. And in the connection with this subject, we find that the Malachi says the very same thing, namely that after a messenger has prepared the way, Yahweh will suddenly come to his temple. Purify it, Malachi 3:1. When he comes, it is not to judge the dead in the heavenly sanctuary, but to judge the living in the earthly sanctuary. And if the Yahweh is going to sit on the throne on the earth and gather the nation before him and judge us and separate the people, where specifically is the Yahweh going to sit, or the Yeshua going to sit? Daniel 2. We find the description and interpretation of the great image which the king of Babylon saw in a dream. We as the Adventists, and for that matter, not only we Adventists, but other Bible students as well, recognize that this image represents the nations of the world from the Babylon's time down unto the day. We also understand that the 12 kingdoms represent the nations in the existence today. Now let us read. Okay, now we plainly see that Yeshua in the Matthew 25 is talking about the judgment for the living, and in the connection with this subject we find that Malachi says the very same thing, namely that after a messenger has prepared the way, the Yeshua will suddenly come to his temple to purify it, Malachi 3:1. So that's what we're doing right here, is we're preparing the way for Yeshua to come and purify his temple, and that would be to purify the son of Levi, which would be the 144,000. When he comes, it is not to judge the dead in the heavenly sanctuary, but to judge the living in the earthly sanctuary. If Yeshua is going to sit on his throne on the earth and gather the nation before him and judge and separate the people, where specifically is Yeshua going to sit? Well, now I'm just going to turn right now and read to you from Luke 1:32. Now this is just a perfect place to read that again, and I've read it many times before, and we're going to read it again. And it says right here, in Luke's own words, he says, let's start with verse 30. And the angel said unto her, This is Luke chapter 1 now. Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with the Yahweh Elohim, the Father. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Yeshua. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Yahweh Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father David, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. So now, where is this Yeshua going to sit? Upon the throne of David. Now, where is the prophecy for this throne of David? Let's go to Daniel 2:44 and 45. It says that, and in the days of these kings. Now, first, let's just back up to verse 34 and 35. Start with that. And then it says right here, thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without the hand. Cut out of where? Cut out of that great mountain there in Zechariah 4. That great mountain before Zerubbabel. Okay. And it says that thou sawest till that a stone was cut out, which is the kingdom of David in its infancy. On earth, that's been resurrected in these last days. Without the hands which smote the image upon his feet, that were of the iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Now notice it says, struck him on the feet was made of the iron and clay. The iron represents Rome, Catholic Church, pagan Rome, and ecclesiastical Rome. And the clay represents the house of Israel. It says so in Jeremiah 18:6. It says, Yahweh is the potter, and the clay in his hands is the house of Israel. So now here this image is made up, the feet is, of iron and clay. In other words, commingled with the Catholic Church and the Adventist Church. Spiritual Israel today. So now does that make sense? The Catholics infiltrated the Adventist Church with Jesuit leaders, and we had our General Conference president has always been a Jesuit. And the Adventists elected him. Okay? So that shows you right there where the iron and the clay mix together in our day. And break them in pieces. And this little stone, the house of David, which I represent, and I represent antithetical David, sitting upon this throne of David. And I'm the one that's interpreting this image for the first time here in Daniel 2. And the components of it. I was given the prophecy for this because it's my job to prepare the way for the Messiah to come and sit upon this throne. Then it says, then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and gold, broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor. So you see the Catholic Church, with the Adventists commingled with the Adventists in our day. This here little stone striking that image on the feet represents destroying the Catholic Church, the Adventist Church, and all those other kingdoms that are represented by the gold and the silver. And that gold represents Babylon. and that silver represents Medo-Persia, the lesser kingdoms of this world. And the brass represents a durable kingdom, enduring forever. Would you believe that? The third part of that image was brass, represents an enduring substance. Okay. Okay, now let us go back to our reading here on the 11th Symbolic Code number 12. We're on page here 18. It says, in Daniel 2 we find the description and interpretation of the great image which the king of the Babylon saw in a dream. Now I just got through talking to you about that. As we Adventists, and for that matter, not only we Adventists, but other Bible students as well, recognize that this image represents the nations of the world from the Babylon's time down to the day. We also understand that the 12 kingdoms represents the nations in the existence today. Now let us read. Daniel 2:44 and 45. And I just got through doing that for you. And I guess I was a little ahead of myself. Let's read it again. And in the days of these kings, that is the toe kings, shall the Elohim of the heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left unto other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without the hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, and the great Elohim hath made known unto the king which shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. Daniel here describes how the earth's governments come to their end. Now how the earth comes unto his end. For he interpreted the stone to be the kingdom. And it is Elohim's kingdom that will smite the nation, not Yeshua's coming from the heaven to take up the saints, as we Adventists have taught. But as Jeremiah called the kingdom Elohim's battle axe, Jeremiah 51:20. What plainer language could be used to say that the kingdom is going to be set up before the nations come unto their end? For the trouble some have believing this is not because of the language, for the scriptures used, but the trouble is with our preconceived ideas that we were built up throughout the years. And the only way we can drive out our former erroneous ideas is to believe just what the Bible says. Now let us turn to Ezekiel 36:17-19. Son of man, when the house of the Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own way and by their doings. Their way was before me as the uncleanness of a removed woman. Wherefore I poured my fury upon them for the blood that they had shed upon the land, and for their idols wherewith they had polluted it, and I scattered them among the heathen. And they were dispersed through the countries, according unto their way and according unto their doings, I judged them. It says, this says that because of the evils of the Elohim's of the people, Elohim dispersed them throughout the countries. Ezekiel 36:20. And when they entered into the heathen, whither they went, they profaned my holy name. When they said unto them, these are the people of the Yahweh, and are gone forth out of his land. For they profaned his name when it was said of them that they are the people of the Elohim gone out of his land. Is it not profaning Elohim's name for the Gentiles to have driven Elohim's people out of their own land and become rulers over them, after the Elohim had so miraculously brought them there and set them up to be the greatest kingdom, even his kingdom on the earth? Could not the Gentiles feel that they had successfully defeated Elohim's purpose for them? Elohim's people having brought this great curse upon themselves through their disobedience, thus profaned Elohim's holy name in the midst of the heathen, whither they went. It has been brought up to me many times that the Gentiles took Elohim's people captive, because Elohim was not able to defend his own kingdom, and therefore he was unable to fulfill his promise unto Israel. Thus was his name profaned among the heathen, all because of the disobedience of the Elohim's own people. Ezekiel 36:21-22. But I had pity for mine holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the heathen, whither they went. Therefore say unto the house of Israel, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, I do not this for your sakes, O house of Israel, but for mine holy name's sake, which you have profaned among the heathen, whither you went. It was because Elohim could no longer tolerate the sins of his people that he, through the Gentiles, had to disperse them. For the heathen did not know that though now Elohim says he will do something about it for his holy name's sake, not because his people are good, the next verses state plainly what he will do. Okay, Ezekiel 36, 23 and 24. And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which you have profaned in the midst of them, and the heathen shall know that I am the Yahweh, saith Yahweh Elohim, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. For I will take you from among the heathen, and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Unto those who ask now, Elohim can defend his name. Now since the heathen have dispersed throughout the nations the ancient kingdom of his people, we need only to read to them what the Elohim here says, that he will gather his people back from all countries, and show them and the heathen that he will yet honor his name by the sanctifying of himself in them before the heathen. Ezekiel 36, 25, 27. It says, then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. Since all of this takes place when the Elohim gathers his people from among the heathen, then no one can dodge the fact that unless we go into the land where the cleansing will take place, we will not be cleansed, and we will not receive the new heart and the Elohim spirit. Now folks, I have a little comment to make here. Here in the land of Texas, B.T. Harloff, the shepherd rod leader, started it in California. Yahweh says, get up out of California, get into a land that I'll show you. And he went east in 1934, and when he got to Waco, Texas, Yahweh said, this is where I want you to set up the headquarters for the kingdom, for the Davidic kingdom. Okay? So now, here in Texas, and this is where the processing of the Adventist church through the 3 feeding pastures is taking place. And when they get through the 3rd feeding pasture, which they've already come through, getting that Center 2002 at Kermit, Texas, then the purification starts when you start the judgment. The first judgment began at the house of Yahweh, starting at Kermit, Texas, 2002. And so now it's in this land of Texas where this prophecy is being fulfilled, as we just read. The first step had already taken place. The ancient man before the house of Otis Johnson was judged in 2002 with all those that stayed with him. The sides and cars were separated, and the new leaders of the house of David were purified from that bunch in 2002. And now we are in the process of the sanctifying, purifying of the house of Israel, but to bring forth the sons of Levi, the 144,000. So this is all taking place right here in this great land of the Texas. So I want to say now that we're ready to bring this study to a close. We're going to close now with a song entitled, Is My Name Written There? God cared not for riches, neither silver nor gold. I would make sure of heaven, I would enter the fold. In the book of the kingdom, with this page is so fair, tell me, Yahshua, my Savior, is my name written there? Is my name written there? On the page bright and fair, in the book of the kingdom, is my name written there? Now my sins, they are many, like the sands of the sea, but the blood of my Savior is sufficient for me. For the promises are written in my letters that glow. Though your sins be as scarlet, I will make them like snow. Is my name written there on the page white and fair, in the book of the kingdom? my name written there. In the beautiful city, where his mansions of light, with his glory but beings in pure garments of white, where no evil thing cometh to his foe but his foot, where the angels are washing. Is my name not written there? Is my name written there? On the page right and fair, in the book of thy kingdom, is my name written there? May everyone be blessed with this message.